It's a village. There we go. And I'll get this one. She's really close. Yeah, she's doing great. Okay. You know, um, as many times as I've read this story of the calling of the first disciples at the Sea of Galilee, it still shocks and mystifies me. They're going about their usual routine, slipping their nets into the black water in the pre-dawn, or maybe knotting up the poles after hauling the night's catch, just as they have on thousands of mornings before. When this complete stranger comes wandering along the shore, he says one thing to them: "Follow me and I will make you fish for people." Immediately, we are told, not after deliberation, not soon thereafter, immediately, they drop everything and follow him. They just walk out of their lives, just like that. What causes them to abandon gainful employment, family, and home? What has them so primed for this moment that all it takes from Jesus is 10 words and they are all in? Professor Warren Carter reminds us that at the beginning of this passage, Jesus has moved to what Matthew pointedly calls the land of Zebulun and Naphtali, names that evoke God's Old Testament covenant apportioning this part of Canaan to the Israelite tribes of Zebulun and Naphtali. So it is land divinely given to Israel, yet it is now also land imperially occupied and owned by Rome. As fishermen, Simon Peter, Andrew, James, and John would be cogs in that Roman economic machine. Their labor subject to contracts and taxation that enrich and feed others while their own people struggle to survive. I'm sure they're tired of living under that kind of system. I imagine its humiliations have slowly worn at their souls. There would be certainly talk in the air and occasional outbursts of resistance through armed rebellion or banditry or messianic hope for one who would deliver Israel from her Roman overlords. Maybe our fishermen have believed in one or more of these fairy tales, but have come to see their uselessness. This must be part of what's going on for them, being stuck in this hopeless political situation. And maybe there's some deep personal yearning as well for a God they can believe in, for a hope they can maintain. Whatever the case, they've been waiting, deeply waiting for something to change, for some new way to reveal itself to them. Nothing else can possibly explain how suddenly and totally they respond to Jesus. Because here he comes, this wandering rabbi with healing in his hands and a claim that the real kingdom has come near, and immediately they're gone. The story made me think of this trip that my family took through the Manu rainforest in northeastern Peru about 8 years ago. One morning, our guides on this trip got us up at dark 30, as they say in the military, and led us on a hike to a huge observation blind on a platform. It was our once-in-a-lifetime chance to watch parrots and macaws congregate to eat clay along this exposed bank called a clay lick, some 50 yards away. Maybe, if we were lucky and the birds didn't get spooked by something. So we had to arrive before the birds did, and we had to speak in whispers, and we had to pad around in socks. So after about an hour, the parrots showed up. Emerald waves of them just pouring through the air. But they never quite settled along the clay bank, maybe because of the surveillance of a couple of hawks nearby. So they flicked away, and we waited a couple more hours. The kids, who were then like 13, 15, and 18, I think, they played cards or laid out on the floor and caught up on their sleep as the air brightened into heat. Finally, the brilliant colored macaws started to arrive. 2 or 3 would fly in and land high in a tree, flashes of vermilion and blue against the leaves, and then a few more in a different tree. Once there were about 25, they started inching closer to the clay lick. They'd launch off of their perch, circle around, and land on a branch or a bit of bush just a little bit closer. Maybe an hour went by this way. The suspense became palpable, like the still before a summer storm. Finally, one nipped onto the tan surface of the clay lick itself, and then another. They began scraping at the walls with their beaks. Gradually, the whole conference of macaws alighted along that exposed surface, dipping and hesitating like gigantic scarlet butterflies. This glorious congregation of color lasted maybe 10 minutes. So beautiful, so fragile that you felt like you were holding your breath the entire time. Then, as if by some secret signal, they left. 24 crimson mini bombers turning and flashing away over the trees. After the macaws were gone, I thought about National Geographic shows. I thought about how we sit at home to consume a sight like that for a few minutes, dropped into some hour of television. And it's beautiful, but it's not the same. I thought about the camera people who bring us that footage. They go out and wait in holes, in trees, in blinds, maybe for days, maybe for months, and maybe for nothing. They wait and wait just to catch that electrical presence in the wild, that brief, tenuous epiphany of jaguar or panda cub or rainbow, whatever it might be. For me, it was an epiphany, an appearance of God in its own way. A small one, maybe. But even though it answered no questions and promised no outcomes, it fed my soul in ways I can't really articulate. God shows up in God's own wild time and God's own wild ways. A 10-minute riot of birds you waited 6 hours to see. A man walking along the sea, offering a promise that makes no earthly sense. I will make you fish for people. The kingdom of heaven is at hand. There you are, in a land promised to you, but dominated by an empire of greed and indifference, and some guy who carries no weapon and brings no followers tells you that the promised kingdom is at hand. How can that possibly be true? Did Jesus ever win even a square foot of Israel back for his people? Not at all. Because what he offered was something else, is something else entirely. The kingdom is at hand because it is a kingdom planted in the heart. When you follow him and give like him and love like him, you do not occupy heaven so much as heaven occupies you. You become its conquered territory. You become the epiphany you wish to see in the world. You become the presence you have been waiting for. Amen.